Hi there and welcome. I'm Rabbi Nachum with the Las Vegas Kollel. In the introduction to his work, Sefer Chafetz Chaim, Chafetz Chaim tells us we've been davening, we've been praying, we've been yearning and hoping for God's salvation and redemption for so many centuries. And the Chafetz Chaim has argued that one of the first sins, the first averos that prevents God from bringing the geula, the redemption and salvation, is lashon hara, the sin of gossip, the sin of speaking negatively about one another. And he goes through several proofs and arguments demonstrating how lashon hara, speaking negatively about one another, it prevents the redemption, it prevents salvation and geula. The Chafetz Chaim points out, we find one of the earliest sins is the Chet HaMeraglim, the sin of the story with the Jews and the spies, when the Jews were about to enter into the land of Israel, and they had sent spies into the land of Israel to go scout out the land, and the spies came back, and they spoke negatively about God and about the land of Israel, which was essentially a form of lashon hara, of speaking negatively and gossip, and it was because of that sin that God does not go ahead and let the Jews enter into the land of Israel, again demonstrating that redemption, salvation, is prevented by the sin of lashon hara, by speaking negatively and by gossiping. Similarly, the Chafetz Chaim points out that we find that Moshe Rabbeinu goes ahead and he understands that the reason why the Jews were suffering back in the land of Egypt and they weren't worthy of redemption and salvation was Achi Noda Hadavar. As Rashi tells us, Moshe saw that the Jewish people had violated the prohibition of lashon hara. They were speaking negatively about one another. It was because of that sin, Moses understands that's why the Jews were not worthy of God's salvation and redemption. The Chafetz Chaim also points out, there's a beautiful medrash that says, Silakti Shechina mi beinechem. God says, I've removed my divine presence from within the Jewish people. Why? Because the sin of lashon hara was between the Jewish people, and that the Medrash tells us, God says, I can't be amongst you in the same kind of manifestation, in the same kind of way, so long that the Jewish people are gossiping, are speaking negatively about one another. And finally, the Chafetz Chaim tells us, he quotes the verse that says, Vayehi b'shuran melech b'hisasei v'rashayam yachad shiftei Yisrael, and God will be king amongst the Jewish people, yachad im shiftei Yisrael, together with the tribes of Israel. And Rashi points out, she'emasai hu melech b'Yeshurun, when is God, as it were, manifest as king over the Jewish people in the sense of God's redemption and salvation? Kashem biyachad shiftei Yisrael, when the Jews are together, all the different tribes, all the different groups of the Jewish people have unity, are together with one another. V'lo agudos, and we don't have divisions and little groups. The Chafetz Chaim tells us, when we speak negatively about one another, when we gossip about one another, well, that is not going to lead us to unity. That's going to create division and divisiveness. We all want redemption. We all are looking for salvation. We all want God's geula and Yeshua. We want to go ahead and see the salvation of God. It behooves us. We got to make sure we're not speaking lashon hara, we're not speaking negatively about one another, and we got to go ahead and make sure we're inspired every day that we're only speaking kindly about one another.